So we're back with another weapon breakdown, the series where I run you guys through all of the weapon stats you need to know, the best loadouts, the recoil patterns, their strengths and weaknesses, the best maps to use them on, even the best factions and gadgets to pair them with. And today we are focusing on what I think is probably the single most slept on weapon in the game, the M249. So without wasting any time, let's get stuck right into a quick overview of the weapon. Now the M249 is such a well-rounded weapon in my opinion, and that's coming from someone who really doesn't love using LMGs in essentially any other shooter. It feels far more in line with an assault rifle than an LMG, especially with the right attachments, and realistically it could just be described as an M4 with 100 rounds instead of 30. So if that sounds good to you, then it might be worth giving this bad boy a shot. Now getting into all of the damage stats, all of these stats have been double checked myself in the practice range, but the initial values have come from XDefiant.com, so shout out to those guys for all the hard work they do over there as well. Starting off with the body shots, the M249 will deal 23 damage per shot to the body up to 31 meters. It will then drop to 20 damage per shot up to 42 meters, and then anything beyond that, it will deal 18 damage per shot to the body. As for the headshot damage, it'll deal 32 damage per shot to the head up to 31 meters, then 28 damage per shot up to 42 meters, and anything beyond that, it will deal 25 damage per shot to the head. Now, in terms of the miscellaneous stats, obviously being an LMG, it has a 100 round magazine, which is pretty much average for the LMG class, even though technically it is above average because the RPK actually only has a 45 round magazine, but compared to the M60 it is pretty much the same. As for the fire rate, it has the fastest fire rate of the LMG class, coming in at 600 rounds per minute. For the reload time, it will take 9 seconds to reload, which compared to all of the other weapons in the game in terms of ARs and SMGs and stuff, that is obviously a very long time, but it is pretty much average compared to the LMG class. The M60 will take a little bit longer, but then the RPK is a fair bit quicker. Now, as for the ADS time, it'll take 425 milliseconds to aim down sights, which again is very slow compared to pretty much every other weapon in the game, but it is actually the fastest of the LMG class. So as you can see, overall, the stats for the M249 compared to the weapons in its own class are very solid. Now, using the damage drop-off ranges as well as the damage stats themselves, we can take a look at the shots to kill as well as the time to kill. For the M249, up to 42 meters, it will take 5 shots to the body to kill an enemy, and then essentially anything beyond that, it will take 6 shots to the body instead. Now, comparing that to both the M60 and the RPK, that is technically the worst in terms of the shots to kill, but obviously keep in mind it does have a faster rate of fire and a little bit easier to manage recoil, so these stats can start to get a little bit misleading. As for the time to kill, it'll take 400 milliseconds up to 42 meters to kill an enemy, again assuming you hit every shot to the body, and then anything beyond that, it will take 500 milliseconds to kill an enemy. Once again, comparing that to the other two weapons in their stock formation, it fares pretty well at sort of close to mid-range, but once you get to long range, it does technically have the slowest time to kill of all of those LMGs. But again, keep in mind that isn't usually how it works. This is assuming you do not miss any shots, and you are definitely going to miss shots with the M60, as well as again the rate of fire is a little bit faster, so each missed shot with the M60 actually costs you a lot more compared to with the M249 or the RPK. So time to kill stats are very useful to know, but realistically they are not the be all and end all, and personally I would say that the M249 has got the best time to kill stats when you actually apply them in game. Now, moving on to the recoil patterns, it has a very good recoil pattern for an LMG, and to be honest, it is pretty much on par with a lot of assault rifles, which is pretty rare for an LMG in most other games. Now, it shoots up and slightly to the left, which is also pretty rare in this game. I feel like most weapons actually recoil to the right instead, but realistically that doesn't really make that much of a difference. The good thing with the recoil pattern for the M249 is that it is mostly vertical rather than being horizontal, which always makes it a lot easier to control. As for the hipfire recoil, I'm not going to lie, it is pretty much not even worth showing this, as it is obviously all over the place. Realistically, you should almost never hipfire with an LMG anyway, so this isn't that useful to look at, but I thought I would throw it in there anyway. Now, moving on to the loadout that I run for the M249, I've called this loadout the AR build because it is built to be pretty much as close to being an assault rifle as humanly possible, which obviously allows you to play a little bit more aggressively than you probably can with any other LMG. For this loadout, I run the tactical grip, which helps a lot with the ADS speed and recoil recovery. I then run the reflex sight, as although the iron sights are actually pretty decent on the M249, I just do prefer having a reflex sight, as at least for me, it makes me a little bit more accurate. Now, Now, I then actually run the quick mag, as that is actually better than the fast mag in my opinion. I wouldn't say that for most other weapons in the game. The fast mag is generally the best option, but with this weapon, the quick mag has no drawbacks and it gives you a 60% faster reload, while the fast mag obviously is a little bit faster with a 75% increase instead of 60, but it does have drawbacks to the ADS speed, which is definitely not what we want with an LMG, as their ADS speed is already slow, and again, we're trying to make this more in line with an AR rather than an LMG. I then run the quick draw tape just to help once again with even faster ADS and sprint to fire time, and then lastly I run the padded stock, which again just helps a little bit with the stability. Now moving on to the strengths and weaknesses, starting off with the strengths, it is easily the most mobile and AR-like of any LMG in the game. Honestly, with the attachments that I just mentioned, it does feel more like an AR than an LMG in my opinion. You can't really feel the general sluggishness that you do feel with most other LMGs, and that is obviously a massive strength. Sort of in line with that too, the mobility is obviously very good for an LMG, plus it does still have that benefit of having more ammo compared to an AR or an SMG. Now as for the weaknesses, even though I just said the mobility is really good for an LMG, it is still slower and a little bit more sluggish than an AR or an SMG. So there are pros and cons to it, of course, but if you are trying to find a weapon that is just perfect for a really aggressive mobile type of playstyle, technically speaking, I have to still put this as a weakness for this one because, yeah, most other ARs and SMGs are still a lot more mobile. Now, in terms of the best arena maps to run this with, I definitely think maps like Arena, Emporium, Noodleplex, and even Attica Heights are all really good for the M249. They all have areas where you can sort of chain together kill after kill with that added ammo. All of those maps do tend to have a lot of areas that are very high traffic, as well as being crucial for the objective areas too. Now lastly, in terms of the best faction to pair it with, in my opinion, it is really good to use the M249 with the Libertad faction. I feel like you can kind of lock down entire lanes or sections of the map while healing yourself or sitting on an objective and doing the same thing. That little bit of extra health that you get in terms of like passive income of health feels like it works really good with an LMG. But with that being said too, by that logic, the Phantoms are also a great choice too, because they obviously do have 20 extra health. Overall, the M249 is easily the best LMG in the game in my opinion, or at least the easiest to get the hang of. The M60 is also a beast, but it is definitely a little bit more niche, and it is much more in line with a typical LMG, where the M249, like I said, is much more in line with an assault rifle, or almost a hybrid between the two classes. Like I said, this weapon is very slept on, so give it a try if you haven't already. You may find one of your favorite weapons in the entire game. But that is it for another weapon breakdown, guys. I am keen to hear all of your thoughts on the M249 in terms of your loadouts and stuff like that, and whether you guys agree that this weapon is actually very slept on. So leave those thoughts down in the comment section. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there in the arena.